All right, how we doing today? Let's roll. I got my boy Bud here. We doing this once again. Saul Lowery Photography, holding this down. All right, so what we're talking about is focusing in your business, and honestly, you can apply that to your life if you really think about it. And after you focus, what you're doing is you're setting your priorities first, and then actually focusing on those priorities, and not just all over the place. So, but what's your take on that?
So the power of focus, right? Number one is super important. Understanding that when it comes to getting a task done, you have to have a certain level of focus.
True.
Now with the focus piece, right, the other part you have to think about is how much energy are you dedicating to this project, to this task, to this thing of focus, right? Because there's moments where if you're giving 110% of your own energy and nothing else, you may end up going in circles.
True.
Right? So figuring out, one, it's important, so you do have to focus, and two, how much of your personal energy do you give towards it? Do you potentially delegate some of those tasks out? So, yeah, we can go deep into it, but number one, it's important.
Yeah, true. So, like, and my same take on that is, if you're just focusing, right, and you're just focusing on this, you're focusing on that, but let's say your business, right? Let's, like I said, let's say you do fitness and I do photography. Somebody does food, and you're not focusing on that. Like, what are you doing with your business? Like, what is your priorities in your business? And you don't think about those, and you just start working on it. Oh, I'm just gonna make a bunch of food and then sell those items. You need to start off with something that you do really well. Maybe you make cakes or something like that.
Yeah.
You set those priorities on making those cakes. So I gotta buy this materials. I gotta do this. But if you all over the place, like, I'm gonna make cakes, then I'm gonna start off with fries, and you're gonna lose your focus, and you're never gonna be able to make that into an actual business. It's gonna be all over the place. So you need to set those priorities, and priorities do change. Like, you have priorities today could be different tomorrow, depending on what happens. COVID-19 happened, or, you know what I'm saying, just life in general happens. You lose a parent or something like that. That can immediately change your priorities of what you're focusing on. So make sure you set those priorities. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, I agree. And, you talked about, setting those priorities. The one thing that pops in my head with that is creating a plan, right? True. Having a true written out plan of what you're going to do and how you're going to tackle it. Because I think a lot of times what happens is, we have this large envision of this large idea of what we see our business or our thing being. But there's so many steps to that large plan. And if you don't write it down and you don't tackle one thing at a time, you get to the point where you're like, it almost like you get overwhelmed, right? You get overwhelmed like, hey, I want this big thing to pop tomorrow, but not understanding that there's 20 steps to get there. So focusing on that one step at a time until you get to that large plan.
So something just popped in my head. So I actually read a book called Getting Things Done, right?
Okay.
Because as a leader in the military, you get to certain levels where you got to be able to plan out and figure out. And one of the main things that was so powerful for me was learning steps.
Okay.
And it seems so small and not a big problem or issue, but it can be huge. Like, what's the next step to get you where you need to be? There's a bunch of steps, but what's the next one, right? And so in the book, he broke it down to just write down what you need to get done, right?
Okay.
All the things that need to get done with that. Now, what is the next step in that project or whatever you're trying to do? And I was like, I'm always trying to get it all done at once. And I said the next step, I guess, will be this one thing: see how much things cost, or talk to the client, or follow up with the client.
Right.
Write those steps down, because now when you go back to say, what was I doing with this client? What was I doing with this thing? You go back to your next step, and boom, you keep moving. And then as you get through your steps, you'll finish that project. Projects are pretty much all a bunch of steps, unless it's just one thing you need to get done. Then you don't need to do all the steps. You just get that thing done.
Got you.
But I think I didn't even really think about that's pretty powerful as far as setting your priorities, and then figuring out what that next step is in that priority and moving forward, and not being distracted by all this white noise that happens around the world. People, multi-level marketing, and all this stuff that people want to pull you into to distract you from what you're trying to accomplish.
Right.
That's powerful.
So, with the prioritizing, with the focus, you got to know what your why is, right? So why are you doing what you're doing from the beginning? Right? No matter what it is, I feel like we always come back to the same point. True. Understanding your why. If you don't know why you're in it, why you're doing it, you're going to fall astray. Because in business and life, it's like this. Up and down, smiles and frowns. You're going to hit a point where motivation ain't enough. True. You know what I'm saying? You got to revert back to the plan.
Yep.
The steps on how you're going to get there. So I think it always relates to, that core of why you're doing what you're doing. Yeah. So when it comes to the power of focusing, there's so much to it. But you have to first understand that it's important. You got to do it.
Yeah. So let me ask this question. What is your why?
Man, so
hit him with it. Sorry, I
man,
put the pressure on him.
So my why is a few things, right? So number one, my family, right? They're my everything. They're my heartbeat. That's my get up and go.
Okay.
But as I've gotten older, I realize it's deeper than that because I'm always gonna take care of my family because that's my priority. But my why is the impacting of people outside of my immediate circle. Right? When I say that, like when we met, how we met.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we met at a Juneteenth event, right?
Yeah.
We were just sitting vibing, just having a conversation and just clicking. You know what I mean? Like, and I left and I was like, oh, this dude is dope. Like, and I'm like, I feel like I know him for years. You know what I mean? And I was like, but personally, I had to come into the situation and say, just be open, right? Be open to conversation. Be open to just kind of being, just showing yourself. You know what I'm saying? Be vulnerable.
Who you are.
Be vulnerable. You know what I mean? I think a lot of times too, at least for me, a challenge I faced was I was afraid to be vulnerable, right? But being vulnerable is a matter of being comfortable.
True.
You know what I'm saying? Being comfortable with myself. So going back to the question of why, I would say it's impacting the people outside of my immediate circle. Like big impact. Like when you come across me, I want you to leave like, oh, this dude is different. You know what I mean? Like this dude is really trying to change the world. Because that's what I'm on. Like I'm trying to change the world with it. Like, and not, I can't even really put it in words, but like when it's all said and done, like everybody that's come across me, I want them to have a positive impact. Granted, listen, I'm human. You know what I'm saying? I make my mistakes, don't get it twisted. I make my mistakes like anybody else. But at the end of the day, like my heart is pure and I want to see the best out of people. I want you to shine. Like, and fitness is my vehicle right now, right? So I'm able to impact a lot of people through fitness, but it's so much more because it's the mental aspect.
True.
So if I can tap into the mental, the physical automatically flows.
True. And I think mental is like, that's everything anyway. Like most of the things, most of your heartaches and pains and everything, stress, is all mentals up here. Yeah. Most of the time. I mean, you get pain like you break your arm or something, but most of that's up here because you see a Navy SEAL, he probably break his arm and keep moving. Like this ain't nothing. Like I'm dragging my leg, I'm going, but it's up here. But I like that, like the why thing. So like for me, I remember reading in a book, and he says to create your why. This is how you create your why. And this sounds kind of messed up, but I'm gonna throw it out anyway. No. Just imagine you at your own funeral, and someone has to go up there and speak on your behalf. What would you want them to say about you? And thinking, so when I heard that, I was like, ooh, what would I want them to say? I would want them to say, he changed my life. He made me feel better than I've ever felt. Like when if it was photography, when I see these pictures, it makes me emotional. It pulls something out of me that I don't normally have unless I see these pictures, or I remember experience with him during a shoot or just being in his vicinity in general. I want someone to say that during my funeral, and that's how, like sprinters. That's how you kind of pull your why out. And he says, if you're in that casket or you're on the outside looking in, and you look up that podium and they say something like, "He was a good guy," you don't want that.
Flawless Fitness. It's not just a brand, it's a movement.